embarrass ourselves, I plead with you. So now I'm going to give over to Honorable Zulu. Honorable Zulu, I plead with you, my brother, that actually confine yourself to the SPD and everything which actually forms part of this specific city. Honorable member, over to you.
Thank you. Because I think we are being asked to behave professional. Yes, and we are trying to make things fit, but that's one I need to reach this time. Yeah, that's why you have to behave in a certain way. Being having a focus on this environmental city, assist the EFC to extract what is really happening on the ground. Even to solve members from expressing their facilities, that will be justified for the special system of the parliament. So, the point of what I was raising on firstly was that we have a minority part chief whip, a majority part chief whip, and I had to do it was also a selection of clubs in society, those are political chief whips. But you see the executive of parliament coming, calling us more. Where that stipulated in the SPD, that an executive of the student parliament may come in the human organization where my own chief whip.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I actually want to respond to your first matter before we actually can proceed with the presentation of Professor. In relation to your first matter, Honorable Member, there is no member of this House who is precluded from actually registering their frustrations or whatever the case may be. There is absolutely none. So I just want to actually put that clear, or make that clear. I've tried, and all of you have seen, I've tried to ensure that I give every person the chance to speak. There is no member in this specific city who can say I suppressed him or her, or I didn't allow them space and time to speak. And I try to actually ensure that I am balanced as much as I possibly can in presiding over the House. I try to be as much impartial and unbiased as much as I possibly can. So yeah, in regards to that. And secondly, Honorable Member, your second point was in regards to, or if you go to the SPD document, Honorable Member, it clearly states the role of the Speaker, that the Speaker of the House actually ensures that there's order in the House. So as the Speaker, I am more than allowed to actually call members into order with the assistance of the Chief Whip, obviously. And I would actually implore members of Parliament that please concentrate yourselves with the SPD document and the Constitution, specifically regarding student Parliament, so that we can be able to effectively engage. I want people to confine themselves in engaging to the SPD document and also the Constitution, specifically the part that speaks about the student parliament. Now with that being said, thank you, Honorable Member. Now with that being said, Honorable Members, it is my pleasure to actually welcome at the podium Professor Son, who will be giving a broad address about curriculum review and exactly what needs to happen for us to ultimately get to a point where we can say that the curriculum corresponds with the needs and the demands of the market. With that being said, I give over to Professor Son, and we are truly grateful for your presence, Prof. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Parliament Speaker. I'll try and project official voice so that everyone can hear me as far as the back of the room. If you can't hear me, please let me know. First, I have indicated to you that this is quite an honor for me to be invited to speak to the student parliament. I'll share with you briefly what is signified for me, the university and the nation. And so I accepted this honor, hoping that it will be an engagement session that we will engage. And I will share with you the scholastic basis of seeking an engagement with student leadership on matters of curriculum. I also prayed quite a bit about to seek God's direction on what to say. And I don't know if you are aware that God answers. He answered me. And he said, tell them everything as it is. Because that will form the basis of the engagement. So what I'm going to tell you today is curriculum and curriculum renewal and curriculum transformation at UKZN in the context of our nation. So I thought I would present my credentials there before I go to the presentation. The purpose of the presentation, honorable members, is to engage. Therefore, it will be nice if, while I'm on the podium, if there is a point that you do not understand, that is not clarified sufficiently, please raise your hand. But if there is a point that you want to discuss, please jot it down for the end. So these are the two divisions. Don't let us pass in the presentation if there's something that is not clear, not clarified. But if there's something that you want to debate, jot it down, we will debate it at the end. This is how I aim to proceed. I want to give a brief overview of what curriculum is and what curriculum renewal and transformation is, and thirdly, why? Why do we want curriculum transformation at this time? What are the drivers? And then I'm going to take a step back and give you a strategic overview, which is at the back of curriculum and curriculum transformation at UKZN. Then I will also touch a little bit on the tactical. Now, when I say strategic, I mean the planning at macro level at UKZN for curriculum transformation. When I say tactical, I mean what it is we desire for each personal student, each individual student, to acquire from both curriculum and curriculum transformation. Those two. What will you get from UKZN curriculum? And what will you get from UKZN curriculum transformation? I will touch a bit on the UKZN approach, and that approach is the one that we must really engage on. And I will touch on the framework, why. Then I'll touch on an unpacking of the strategic plan 2017 to 2021 and 2022. I will put it also in the context of strategic plan 2023 to 2023, which is a 10-year strategy, a departure from the 5-year strategies of the past. Unfortunately, I can't say much on the 10-year future strategy because it is under crafting at the moment. It does touch on curriculum transformation though. What has UKZN achieved so far from strategic plan 2017 to 2022 in terms of curriculum and curriculum transformation? And then I'll bring three main activities of this university, which in a way make it unique, and I'll say why. That are coming together to craft curricula and to transform curricula. And that is the teaching and learning strategy, the institutional audit, which is taking place now, and project renewal. I will integrate these three before I come to the conclusion. So let us see, what is curriculum? It's a big thing, curriculum. It is actually bigger than most people realize. But there is a uniqueness about curriculum. And this uniqueness deals with the fact that at the center of curriculum is the student. If curriculum is indifferent to the student and a whole lot of characteristics of the student, of the time, not a general student, a student of UKZN in 2022. If it is indifferent to that student, it is starting to fail already. Probably chances are that that student will graduate into unemployment because curriculum was indifferent to that student. It touches virtually everything. Most of us will often think of curriculum in terms of what you learn. I'm a chemist, I'm an organic chemist. So I will teach heterocyclic reactions, neutrophilic substitution reaction, blah, 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 and think that is curriculum. It is a component of curriculum, yes, but it is a small component because it deals only with knowledge. Doesn't touch on attitudes, doesn't touch on preparedness for workplace and service, doesn't touch for how you prepare yourself to earn your own livelihood. Believe me, your fixed substitution reactions will not make you start your own business. They will make you understand what SASO does. It touches on your experience on campus. It touches on your experience in the workplace while you are in tenure. How many here in this room have been to any workplace formally on account of the curriculum? This is 10. Is there anybody here for education, teacher training? Nurses? Hospitals? Okay. But you can see my point. That is actually this phenomenon of students and learners experiencing the workplace while they are in tenure is a minority in a traditional university. It is a majority in the UOTs. Interestingly, the UOTs are clinging tenaciously to that because it is their competitive advantage, which we, the traditionalists, don't have, except for professional degrees. I'll ask you a question later about what are your views on experiencing the workplace while you are in tenure. While you are doing your LLB, what are your views about sitting in court, about sitting in a law firm? Curriculum is also purposely planned by the university. At macro level, the entire collection of our programs, which we refer to as the program and qualification mix, is our curriculum. At micro level, the course content of organic chemistry module 1 semester 1 is curriculum. The combination of courses that you take at your choice as well as prescribed for you is curriculum. But it is such a small component of it. The student experience is the center of the curriculum. The difference between the first time entering student coming in from high school, fast forward 3-4 years, student graduates, and put a minus sign between the two. That is curriculum. Everything that happens to that student between the time they joined university and the time they exited. If those experiences make that student a better person holistically, you have a good curriculum. If those experiences make this student to go and practice corruption and embezzle public money, you have a bad curriculum. upfront. Now there's a minor point to consider, and this point is this. If you look at the history and the culture of the university, they tend to start rigid and changing over time. Yet if you look at the student society and the rest of the industry, they tend to be dynamic because they have to respond to global imperatives. Now here is the difficulty. We have a changing environment where we are sending the students after graduation. It is dynamic. We have a university which is rigid. That's the problem. That's the curriculum problem. Okay? The overarching curriculum problem is that university culture and history are very stubborn to change. But where the student is going, it's like a river of raging waters. The student is experienced only in terms of the dynamics of a pond. The water doesn't move. That's university. The student will end up not in a pond, but in a river of raging waters, and will not be able to manage. Okay, curriculum renewal. I'm just going to touch on a few frameworks. There are several renewal and transformation frameworks that are applicable in most universities, including ours. For example, the decolonization imperative responds to historic injustices, particularly in historic injustices against the African man. Because it is the African man who was colonized. Please forgive those men. I'm using it in the inclusive sense, but let me qualify the African men and women. Employability in the curriculum as a characteristic of the curriculum is responding to the increasing incidence of unemployment, obviously. So it is rational for us at this time to zero in on that particular point, and I hope we will find time to get into it, but the engagement, remember, will depend on you. Entrepreneurship is also a response to the urgent need to own appropriate economy. We train students, they go and get employed in somebody else's business. Most of them, they get employed in businesses owned by people in Canada and Sydney. Very few businesses owned by people in South Africa who have South African citizenship. So therefore, entrepreneurship is pivotally important to make sure that you will go out there, you will start your own business, and you will fail and succeed. And then you will have appropriated a small fraction of the economy of your country. Student-centeredness responds to the indifference of historic curricula to the student of today. Agility is the speed by which we respond to changes. And this is another core issue that we must discuss at the end of this presentation. So strategically, we respond to curriculum by means of the strategic planning processes. In this case, we are all part of a larger and more central role. Therefore, strategic entities such as government have got to be part of curriculum center. They are the ones that set the standards. They are the ones that set the scarce skills. They say we'll put more money in these skills because we want to attract more students. We will put less money in these skills because we have an oversupply of these skills. They have a part to play in curriculum. But then, there are several areas, for example, of scarce skills. What is the skilling for mining? What is the skilling for services, agriculture, logistics, technology, industrialization, for IR, and so on? I'll come back to this point. Learners seldom are aware of this. learners almost always participate in the tactical. Because you want to get a degree, you want to become a teacher, and you want to get a job. Now somebody tells you that actually government wants us to become engineers. Government wants us to prepare people that are going to save ESCOM, which is currently failing. But you say, no, I want to be a lawyer. So this is the difference between strategic and tactical. The processes and procedures and approaches are tactical. The agility, the speed at which we respond as a university to this, they are tactical. Personal choices, career guidance, all of that, that's tactical. And then there's the issue of proving the curriculum. Now we have prepared it, now we send you to the workplace to test if it will work. Let me tell you an experience I prepared a curriculum sometime, I think it was before 2014, because I wanted my engineering programs to be accredited. And I was at Walter Sisulu University. It was a time when most universities were getting reviewed for reaccreditation. Unfortunately, at that time, deliberations, who happens to be in East London, the city where WSU was training, is still training engineers. Deliberations put a very silly statement in the media to say that they will not take any Walter Sisulu University students. I was furious. I drove over there, talked to the man, and I said to him, why do you put this in the media? Not even said it to me. Why do you put it in the media? He says, no, I've been hearing this from who? So I said, let's cut the discussion short. I'll give you 12 of my students, test them out for 6 months. If they fail you, you don't have to pay them. If they pass, if they do the job well, then you will give them all their entitlement. And second, the accreditation is coming up now. They will still be in your manufacturing factory when the accreditation results come out. My students perform very well. Second, all my engineering programs were re-accredited. And right next door, NMLU, only half. Much better university, so-called, didn't get accreditation. I went back to the other friends. I said, curriculum is not the image of the university. It is the experience of the student. You will also remember, we were doing review of the LLB. UCT flunked. UCT! They flunked it. You guys hadn't got it. UCT went to court. This is what happened to UCT. Curriculum is not the image. It is the experience of the student. If you forget everything I said, remember that. Let's go to the combination now of the strategic and tactical. Renewal and curriculum renewal and transformation need to fully comprehend and take into consideration the major players in the economy. Otherwise, you are calculating for what? Don't tell me. We can be calculating for scholastic reasons of the university. The university known for its scholastic prowess. That's fine. You produce scholars. They don't get jobs. We have to consider the key players in the economy of a nation. This is why you have to look at the economy of South Africa when you're constructing curriculum. This is the economy of Gauteng. This is the economy of KZN. You see, you can't give the economy one stroke of a brush. As you move from province to province, the economy changes. You get to get those into consideration. Now, the scholars say, no, but university education is universal. Oh, yeah, really? But the graduates that we train at the taxpayers' money, we want them to work in this economy. Don't I get an A? Okay. It is an oddity when we train graduates and they leave and they go and work in Canada. We don't like that. But they are universal. If they are universal enough, they will fit in Canada. What do we do at Ukzn? What is our approach for both curriculum and curriculum transformation? Well, in the strategic plan, I've already mentioned that the one that lapses this year and one that starts next year, there is a direct mention in Goal 1 of curriculum transformation. And it is not only driven by the recent movement of students, including things called decolonization. That was just a wake-up call for the universities, because universities were being rigid and static. And the students nationally shook them up a little bit and say, hey, don't sit on a concrete curriculum. Give us a fluid curriculum. But that's not what we responded to. The teaching and learning strategy is also the main driver of the curriculum. However, I want you to understand this. There is the so-called academic strategy in a university. At Ukzn, it is a combination of the teaching and learning strategy, the research strategy, and the community engagement strategy. Together, they form the academic strategy, and they are the necessaries of curriculum and curriculum transformation. We also have quite a number of policies which guide curriculum designers and curriculum transformers how to go about it. Now, interestingly, these are some of the drivers of rigidity in university curriculum transformation. Sometimes you've got to step out of policy and do the sensible thing. This is why I am so honored that you have invited me here. You said, Prof, just put policy aside. Just come and talk to us. Just talk curriculum transformation. It's not only the policy what you did. So policy tends to make universities rigid. I really hope, sincerely hope that this university will emerge not as rigid because of what you did today, and also because of what you will do going forward. Because I've been told in no uncertain terms, come and talk to us, we will discuss things, and then going forward we will hold you accountable for the discussions that we do today. I'm good with that. Let's just walk parallel to policy. Don't forget it, but we walk alongside. We have a cyclic curriculum review at Ukzn, which repeats every 3 to 5 years. And this review cycle says every program must be reviewed at least once in 3 to 5 years. And this review is serious. This is the core, the cornerstone of curriculum transformation. You have a program, you study this program, it was reviewed 5 years ago, it is reviewed again this year. And then again in 5 years. People have asked the question, is this not too long? when we talk about that in the discussion. We have now a project of complete renewal of the institution, both in terms of its structures, policies, and strategies, as well as its programs and its curriculum. Goal 1 says we aim to promote excellence in teaching and learning through innovative curriculum design and development. And the purpose in that goal is to offer progressive and responsive curricula. This is what has been achieved. Let me not touch too much into this. This is historic. Let me go into one of the components of the teaching and learning strategy. We did a SWOT analysis in the teaching and learning strategy. And in that SWOT analysis, we identified curriculum renewal by means of institution-wide review of schools and programs, and alignment of teaching and learning practices to the learning styles of students. And more attention should be focused on student-centered learning and active learning approaches. In that strategy, 38 core projects were identified, and it was consulted across the colleges. I must say that that first round of consultation was a bit of a shock to the colleges and the schools, because they were saying, in terms of the prospective resourcing of this strategy, it is too ambitious. How are we going to achieve these objectives? So, I decided in fact, to withdraw the strategy after it served, once it served. And then, recently we started the development of a new teaching and learning strategy. Two of the goals of that new strategy have to do with a curriculum renewal and transformation. Okay. I want to talk about who is involved in curriculum renewal, who is involved in curriculum transformation, and why. I am hoping that our students, as you please, they will find their space. But I'm also hoping that our students will occupy that space. I'm very familiar with the methodologies that we use to occupy the spaces. They can shock me sometimes, but I accept. Use your methodologies. I mean, the way you do business, it means you believe in your methodology. Therefore, if it gets things done in parliament and it gets things done in student governance, what other methodology are you going to use? But be that as it may, come to your spaces. First identify your spaces, occupy them, and use your methodologies. I'll be there to be a moderator of your methodologies. Okay, here's a paper that was published by Mayer and Bushney some years ago. These ladies identified 18 stakeholders that must be there in curriculum transformation. I mean, how do you bring all of these learners? That's what touched me by Bushney. At the top of their list is the student. The alumni, employers, government, blah, 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 blah. In real terms, however, the minimum that you must have And all those 18 can be distributed in this minimum. But the minimum that you must have is 3 groups of consultations. And in real terms, actually, there are fatal curriculum deficiencies when these 3 basic minimum stakeholders do not meet and collaborate and cooperate in curriculum transformation. Let me be a little bit detailed on this one. Forgive me. We're going to kind of talk like a professor now. You see, a truly responsive curriculum is at the center of the multi-stakeholder approach. However, you will see that if UKZN only talks to government, which is the left 2 seconds, the curriculum does not respond to employment because the employers are that side. They were not in the party. We don't know what is happening in their workplace. We don't know the characteristics that they want of the student. If it's a cooperation of the government and the workplaces, you will find that you will end up with a curriculum that Senate cannot approve because the government and the employers, they talk together. They did not consider our strategies, our policies, and our procedures. Similarly, if UKZN only talks to workplaces, we will end up with a curriculum that can not be accredited by the government. These are the problems. You need that minimum of 3 to come and talk together. Okay, you know that institutional audit is taking place now. You also know that the institutional audit framework is going to ask us as a university questions in 4 focus areas. And in each focus area, we are going to have to meet 4 standards. This is a total of 16 standards. I talked earlier about government and standard setting. It is already upon us. In particular, Standard 13 says an effective institutional system for program design, approval, delivery, management, and review. If we are wishy-washy in program management, our curriculum review and transformation will be a lip service. And this is why I'm saying that when we do it, we have to do it like this. Second, in Standard 14, there must be evidence-based engagement at various institutional levels among staff and students with 1, curriculum transformation and curriculum reform and curriculum renewal. Learning and teaching innovation, the role of technology, the curriculum, in the curriculum and in the world of work. You see, this standard brings the bottom second and the right-hand second at UKZN. So that standard is critical for a truly responsive curriculum. Standard 16 doesn't beat about the bush. It goes straight into how are you knowledgeable about the fit of your student in the workplace. It's actually quite a problem because once they graduate, most universities tend to forget. It's not our problem anymore. But this standard says, check them out, follow them. Who is employed? Who is unemployed? Why? Some universities overseas, they track them and they find the ones that are not employed, they find out why, and they call them back at no cost. In order to come and address the deficiencies where we did not succeed with you, we will succeed the second time. This is their philosophy. Now, Project Renewal is the brainchild of the Vice Chancellor. He came here and he looked at the university. He kept saying at EMC, we've got to turn this thing around. We've got to turn it around. And we've got to turn it around at the level of curriculum. And that's what project, if you don't understand Project Renewal because of the complexities of engagement, understand this. At the core of Project Renewal is the student and the curriculum. And of course, I've already touched on the purpose of integrating the outcomes of Project Renewal, the institutional audit, and strategic planning. Okay, Project Renewal will focus on the academic disciplines, and there, the Project Renewal questions the curriculum. Now, I want you to go back to our original discussion on what curriculum is. So Project Renewal is not questioning the content, course content. It's questioning the professors, the students, the infrastructure, the student experience. Okay, these students seem not to be doing well. Is there something wrong with their residence life? These students seem to be struggling. Are they having sufficient stimulation from co-curriculum activities? So, Project Renewal questions the curriculum in its broadest sense. What are the priority focus areas? Academic offerings. Again, the center of the curriculum. Okay, now my last few slides deal with the Ukzn classes for curriculum renewal and transformation. How do we do that again? And you need then to jot your notes and say to me or to ourselves in the house, where are we missing both? It was stimulated, of course, by the call by students nationwide for curriculum renewal and reform, but fundamentally we are becoming extremely concerned by some of the eventualities of our students. Now let me talk about a few of the other eventualities that are not often talked about in our university and in other universities. We are very much aware of the incidence of unemployment. But I'm very, very concerned about the incidence of depression and suicide among students. What is the contribution of the higher education sector to that particular component, to that particular concept? Are these students coming to university and finding an environment that just doesn't give the hope that they came here for? Is it possible? Instead, is it possible that our students come with hope and they encounter a monster? Is it possible? I mean, I don't want to be too much of a critic of the university system, but I can't afford at the same time not to be a critic of the university system. Depression, suicide, dropout, I suspect that the students came, were confronted with a curriculum, and they couldn't enter into this thing and engage with it. And these were some of the eventualities that are not often highly spoken of. They are in the literature, yes, but the literature says this, and what the literature says, I seldom find it being plowed back into the curriculum transformation agenda. Curriculum transformation to enable our students to learn without killing themselves. Okay, there is an approach that QPA uses. Program design and development, analysis of thematic elements of reviews, and the key tool at UKZN is the review. Program review, school review, or sometimes a review of a group of programs. That is the tool we use for curriculum review and transformation. We also consider the key performance indicator and we rationalize the curriculum. These blue slides are boring. Just listen to what I'm saying. 1, the program design and development is an ongoing theme. I've already talked to you about the revolving 3 to 5 year cycle. We just do it continuously. And I've already alluded to the fact that people are starting to question how frequent, the frequency of this. The analysis of thematic areas is very important because curriculum at the end is broken down to the different season categories or classification of educational subject matter. The season category of law is different from the classification of text. And curriculum review, therefore, in chemistry is different from curriculum review in law. Do you agree with me on this?
Yeah, we're with you.
Thank you. So I can't say, here's the policy. Everybody apply this policy. And yet, lo and behold, that's what university systems do. So there has to be an unpacking, an articulation of the policy and strategy for each season category. Okay, thank you very much. We must say how this must pan out in medicine, in health sciences. We must also consider the key performance indicators. That's what we do at UKZN. And finally, we rationalize the curriculum. Key in the rationalization of the curriculum is to make it fit within the parameters of the university, government, that tripartite alliance that I showed you. If it doesn't fit there, there will be things that we aim to do that are not doable. And we must be frank about the things that we want done, whether they are doable or not. This is probably a very important message to student leadership. Because student leadership, as students, you are clear about the things you want. Ironically, as management, we are also quite secretive about our clarity on these matters. But we understand it. But as you speak, you rationalize. You speak, you rationalize. You've seen this. And you say, oh my God, that cannot be done. That is it will cost us millions. We don't have this money. Rationalization cannot be avoided. Oxford does things that no other universities do because they're rich. Enough said on this one. So, This is the last slide leading to discussion. I'm just throwing some questions that you might start to think about. What are the students' main concerns at Ukzn about their current curriculum as it is? Okay? About the curriculum as we have it. What are their concerns about the transformation thereof? Because you've seen some measure of curriculum transformation. Are we doing it right? Where are we missing the boat? What elements are missing in our praxis? Do we consult enough industry? Believe me, we cannot avoid consulting government because we won't get the money. We run the university like a business. We make sure that your program is accredited, and at the end of each budgeting cycle, we get a cut from government. Because if it's not accredited, we get nothing. So the bottom circle there, we look after that circle. But are we looking at the other two circles above in that diagram? We'll just quickly go back to that diagram. We make sure that we do not renege on the bottom circle. But are we really looking at the workplaces and the industries? To tell you the truth, I'm concerned at a personal level. What will enhance graduate employability and the development of their personal livelihoods, including entrepreneurship? One of the things that has become controversial about in the sector as a whole now, not as an academic in Ukzn, is that I'm saying we pay lip service to entrepreneurship. We teach, some courses we teach entrepreneurship. In other words, we say, this is how you go about it. And we leave you at that. And when you push to say, students must actually start their own businesses. You say, no, that's not our businesses, universities. No, man, you're pushing us beyond our mandate, which is correct. The DHEST mandate ends with the curriculum and the graduate and the degree. There is no provision for the business. But supposing it would actually revolutionize the economy if the students graduated with a degree and a business. Yeah, think about it. Sometimes you must think out of the box. A colleague of mine, way back, developed an MBL program. Unfortunately, he fell into hard times before it went to CHE, but he developed an MBL program which consisted of 3 years of coursework and research and 3 years of business incubation. You would not graduate from that MBL without a business of your choice. You don't get a certificate. You have passed the courses. You have submitted all the assignments, but you have not incubated a business. So you stay here until you incubate a business. Okay? Think out of the box. Finally, what elements of society and industry would you wish to be equipped to renew and transform? Listen to me. We have a strategic responsibility to society. The Education White Paper 3 on higher education transformation says that higher education must be transformed in order to do what? To transform society. Thank you very much, honorable members of the Parliament. I'll hand over to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Specifically on your last point about transformation, we always speak about the fact that universities are the intellectual hub of society. In order for us to ultimately transform society as a whole, we need to start in institutions of higher learning. In fact, we're supposed to spearhead the conversations that will ultimately ensure that society is actually transformed in accordance with the needs of the people. And another thing which I actually want to say before I give over to the House, it's actually that change does not start in big stages. It starts in small stages, actually. It takes a constellation of conversations to ultimately change something or to ultimately bring about positive change. But at the same time, I'm aware of the fact that we can never be able to change the world or our country or our province just in one instance, in one conversation, or one dialogue. But at the same time, I hope that this particular address by Prof. Sonia was able to actually cast a stone across the waters, which will ultimately, create many ripples. And I'm hoping that those ripples will ultimately reach the intended places, our constituents, and all other corners of the institution, which actually need to hear exactly what you had said. So, Prof, in your address, if there's a live stream, I forgot to tell about the live stream. So there were other people as well that are actually tuning in for this seating. And usually our sittings, they usually have more than 3,000 viewers online. And so I'm not sure of the exact number of people watching from home now, but we truly appreciate your address, and we'll be having a conversation with you in regards to that. I also want to bring you to the fact that it's only in Parliament, it's only in UK's Student Parliament, where you actually find the president of the executive branch of student governments, as well as all other different clubs and societies in the institution, where you find all these people in one place. So this is actually the most effective place for you to deliver such, a comprehensive address about curriculum review and exactly what it entails, because we have our president here, we have other members of the executive, SRC, we have clubs and societies, not only the political clubs and societies, we have 3 chief whips. We have the chief whip of the non-political clubs and societies, and they're inclusive of the CSCs, they're inclusive of religious organizations, and all of that. And then obviously we have the political clubs and societies, EFF, SC, SASCO. So I just want to say to you that actually your message has actually found resonance within these people. It actually was a profound message which will ultimately be delivered to their constituents. With that being said, honorable members, I actually think that we now get to a point whereby we have to engage effectively with the address of Prof. Sonia. And I want to state something clearly that, we are having a conversation. It's a conversation where we actually bring different perspectives into one, so it's more like a table. People always speak about a table and the fact that, when you do not have, or when you do not find expression in a certain table by not having a chair, you create your own table. But fortunately for us, actually, we've been able to have a person who actually brings so much insight into the conversation, into our table. Prof. Sonia is in our table now, so we must engage with him in regards to his presentation. So thank you so much, Prof. Sonia. With that being said, honorable members, I am going to give over to the chairperson of medical school, who's actually going to provide an overall response to the address by Professor Sonia. Thereafter, I'll open up the floor to members of parliament who will effectively engage with the points which are raised by Professor Sonia. Then after members of parliament have actually engaged the contents of the address by Professor Sonia, then we'll be able to actually go to the second presentation, which will be done by Honorable Mr. Suleiman. Honorable Chairperson, are you ready, or can I just go straight to the...
Yes, I can.
Okay, you can make your way to the podium, Honorable.
Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members of Parliament, and Bingelela Nonke. As introduced, I'm Tony Sasbia, the outgoing chairperson of medical school. While Prof. Sonia was delivering the curriculum review presentation, while you were presenting, Prof, I think one of your questions at the end was, what elements are we missing? I think this is with regards to the context of UKZN. I was really lobbied to say, please refer to the presentation you've just made, because many of these things, I think Prof was coming from a point of the starting discussions, and it's things we are not necessarily seeing currently in the current curriculum of UKZN. Prof mentioned that curriculum is the begins from the time a student enters the university and ends when they leave. Now I want to say the end point of curriculum then means that it gives the purpose of why we're here. It has to have an end point. Yes, it starts from the time we leave, and then it starts from the time we come here and ends when we leave. But what are we trying to achieve with this curriculum? What is the purpose of then us coming into a tertiary institution? Now the purpose of education is to enable us to take up space in the society. I know this has been said many times in many different forms, as Prof has said himself, but the purpose of us coming here is for us to then be able to go out and take up space in society. Now in the context of UKZN, an institution which prides itself with having been reformed, or rather transformed, this directly translates to the purpose of us coming to UKZN is to make sure, is to enable rather, that the black students can be able to go out there and take up spaces in the society. Now, I think the main things we're missing, Prof, in terms of in the context of UKZN, in terms of the curriculum, is evaluation. As I said, there needs to be an endpoint somewhere. Now, here the best way to evaluate the effectiveness of the curriculum is not through module evaluation sheets or those other things, but rather through evaluating the number of or the percentage of graduates who we send out there, and after graduating they find or create jobs. We seem to be fixated, and it excites us, rightfully so, that we are seeing many graduates from UKZN, but does that translate to the number of jobs that those people are getting or creating? And if the answer is no to that question, then we are definitely doing something amiss. So, and as I said, if these numbers are low, and this means that the service we are rendering as UKZN is irrelevant to the context, or does not respond to the demand of South Africa or surrounding places. And then another way of evaluating the curriculum, Prof, is to look at evaluating the core curriculum, is to look at the pass-fail ratio, which then gives you an insight of, or rather will inform the delivery of the curriculum, if we are able to deliver the curriculum as intended, or if we are able for students to allow them to engage in the curriculum that we're giving them. Again, if there's a high percentage of failing students, it directly translates to us failing to deliver the curriculum as intended. And another thing I want to touch on briefly is, I think Prof. Songa touched on it a bit, is timeless evaluation or review of the curriculum. Now, if you look at an institution like UKZN, you get a turnover of students after, say, four years. So I think then it begs us to have such sessions to come back and sit and evaluate the service we're providing to the population. Is it effective as it was 4 years ago? Does it address the needs of the society? Because times change and generations change, and economies also change. And after that massive turnover of students, we should come back to such sittings and reevaluate and see that is our curriculum again addressing the social needs of our population. However, if such curriculum reviews do not inform policy changes, and I think Prof touched on it to say, policies, they make universities stagnant, and that's very unfortunate. If we're going to sit here and discuss curriculum reviews and that does not translate to policy changes, then unfortunately we are engaging on an emotion-revoking but rather fruitless discussion. And then lastly, Prof, I think again you touched on it on your presentation, to say we really owe it to our constituents to have such discussions, because again, curriculum as you defined it is what we do here, the experience. But the end point, and I really like to hammer on this, the end point, the reason why I left Ngwavuma to come here is to be able to leave this place and go work, and then work as a community member and serve the community of South Africa. And as I learned, Speaker, these sessions are very important. I think what Prof has presented is not necessarily, as he said when he started, not necessarily what is happening, and you also hammered on this point that it starts a discussion that should be ongoing. And I'd really like to lobby honorable members to this view of really focusing on these changes and how they affect us, and how we can use such sitting to influence and change policies. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of Medical School. I think we actually spoke at length about the address of the prof, and specifically about the fact that we need to ensure that we get to a point whereby our universities do not produce crammers of content, but they actually produce innovative graduates who will be able to go out there, start their own businesses, and be very effective, not only within South Africa, but globally. So I truly appreciate the address of the Chairperson of Medical School. In regards to that, something else which I also just want to touch on in regards to the address of Professor Sonia, it's the fact that he actually made mention of this, that what exactly is it about the curriculum that leads to chemical imbalance that triggers depression. Those are just some of the things that actually need to be closely monitored and actually studied about the curriculum as it is. So with that being said, honorable members, I actually want to give over to the Chief Whip of the non-political clubs and societies. She'll actually be adding, in regards to what already has been said by Professor Sonia and also the Chairperson of Medical School and also Professor Sonia. But the aspect with which she'll actually be coming to the conversation is from the angle of decolonization, because we can never run away from the fact that we need to factor in decolonization in a conversation about curriculum review. How do we ultimately ensure that we get to a place whereby the curriculum and ultimately the demands of the market, they actually speak to who we are as African people? How do we ensure that we get to a point whereby we can be compatible to countries and markets like China, because those markets actually speak to the core values of their people? So in regards to that kind of discussion, I'll give over now the platform to Honorable Naledi Nguse, the Chief Whip of non-political clubs and societies. And the last time we checked, I'm not sure if something has changed. She was also the Deputy President of Inectus. I'm not sure if there was a recent AGM of Inectus, so I'm not sure if it's still the same thing. But over to you, Honorable Member.
Greetings to the House, honourable members, our guest speakers, and the virtual House also, with all protocols observed. I am Naledi Nguse, Central President of the Golden King International Honor Society, and outgoing Deputy President of Inactus UKZN. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon."
Honourable members, order, honourable members, order. I actually must say that it's the most dishonorable thing to say, or to do rather, for a person to actually laugh whilst another person is on the podium rather. So can you please be well behaved, please?
I repeat it again. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world." In that statement, my view is changing the world requires a comprehensive understanding of the history of our continent. In order to avoid repeating the same brutalities and injustices we've barely recovered from, a comprehensive understanding of our continent, its rich diversity and its momentous beauty, as well as an extensive overview of challenges that we face in our continent, so that we can develop uniquely African solutions to African problems, all of which is necessary to center our continent as a unique and dependable presence in an increasingly interconnected world such as the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Decolonization is a key to ensuring that education remains the key to building a more inclusive, productive, and just society, and establishing Africa as the centerpiece for growth. What decolonization entails has been well rehearsed in literature, and I shall not repeat much of it here. My interest lies not much so in what decolonization is, but in what it could become. decolonization, as Neil Groff once said in 1999, and writing about globalization, is that decolonization is not a subject, it's not an object, to be constrained by definition, but a focus for speculation, for gathering and generating meaning insight. But let me say a few things about decolonization for the sake of advancing the discussion. First, there is no single meaning to decolonization. Second, decolonization does not have the mean to involve destruction. Thirdly, it is a process, not an event. What has been decolonized has the potential to produce colonizing effects and vice versa. Fourthly, decolonization does not necessarily mean turning back into the clock of a time when the world was a different place. Even now, it's different from what it was before. It needs to speak to challenges faced in a contemporary world. As I said, we are in the fourth industrial revolution. So what does decolonization include? Decolonization, and in terms of the curriculum, means creating spaces and resources for a dialogue among all members of the university on how we can reimagine and envision all cultures and knowledge systems into the curriculum, and which respect to what is being taught and how it frames the world, reimagining theory and praxis. Centering African languages to educational development to foster greater inclusion and access to education. Centering all cultures and value systems in African education. Mind you, highlights African education, because we are in Africa, by the way. As well as cultivating African knowledge systems and respect to coexistence of cultural diversity in cultural development. Decentralizing and deplatforming of anti-African voices. What do I mean by that? For example, major social media companies such as TikTok, that we are familiar with, Twitter and Metaverse, which is Facebook, has recently established some degree of modern day presence in deplatforming problematic and harmful individuals, such as banning of the former US President Donald Trump for his dangerous and false claims regarding the 2020 election, and Andrew Tate for his harmful and misogynist statements. This showed the effectiveness of deplatforming those who endanger progress by choosing not to amplify them in those settings, same as settings where we will be envisioning and reimagining the future we want to see in the curriculum of education in South Africa, to bring a smaller context. Deplatforming those who long for the colonial and exclusionary days, and elevating voices which we really need that aim to build a more inclusive space. With regards to modernizing the curriculum, I firmly believe for students at university to have the right skill sets when entering the work world.
societies that are there any people who have been prepared to a formal response to the address of persona before we go to the actual dialogue, the question and answer session? Are there any people that I made contact with you on WhatsApp, and are there any people who actually have been able to sort of, are there any prepared speeches or anything to that effect?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you please give me one speaker, please?
Honorable member, the attendance.
Honorable member, all over to you, Honorable member. But honorable members, please. I would want to know before we actually start what aspect of the okay, directly, okay. Thank you. Okay, honorable member. I just want to confirm, where is the chief whip of the majority party? Is there a person slated to? None. Okay. So there is. Okay, Honorable Naledi, have you prepared someone from your own caucus?
Yes, we do.
Okay, you have the person. Okay, honorable members, please, let's reserve the singing for afterwards. So one thing which I'm actually getting from the chief whips is that for the political clubs and societies, they've actually reserved one person, which is Honorable Mkondisi. For SASCO, I hear that there hasn't been a person slated to respond formally, so I assume that SASCO will actually respond, during the question and answer session. And then for the non-political clubs and societies, regardless of the fact that Honorable Nguse gave an address, but she also has to slate a person who actually responds to the address. So she's actually telling me that there is a person who's going to be giving an address from the non-political clubs and societies. And that is Honorable Demi Mukantu, the PhD candidate from the College of AES. Honorable members, for now I'll give over to Honorable Mkondisi to respond, and then after Honorable Mkondisi, I'll give over to Honorable Mukanti. After Honorable Mukanti, we'll actually take questions from the floor. Over to you, Honorable Member. Order, Honorable Members, order.
Greetings, Honorable Members, the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and the Secretary of Parliament, and Honorable guest. My name is Mkondisi Ntembu, the former chairperson of the Economic Freedom Fighter Student Command at Westville, and also a member of this Parliament. So I'm just here to engage on a report given by Professor on the curriculum of this institution. So basically, first I will touch on the first point, which speaks of the decolonization of the education and in this institution. When we speak of the decolonization, we speak of the curriculum itself, as you mentioned, Prof. However, in this institution, go to the libraries of Ukzn. You will find the context and the information we find in the libraries. We will find economics that speaks of a capitalist economist, imperialist economist. We will find things like, when we speak about economics, they are speaking about invisible hand. Things that doesn't relate with our African context, how we're going to move in terms of education system. Number two, here we have a documentary center which is named after Mahatma Gandhi, a person who is a racist to African people, but is here, the institution is praising the very same person, but we are speaking about the curriculum which must shape our future as students. I'll just move to the second point. I'm not going to rush too much. Prof, you mentioned the project renewal, which is a response of the institution to the curriculum renewal. The project renewal, when you see it and understand it, it only seeks to maximize the profit for the institution. It doesn't provide the solution to the students who stand to benefit. As a revolutionary who is guided by the schools of thought of Marxist, Leninist, and Fanonian, what you see as a medicine, Prof, I see it as a disease. Because the masses of our people must be the one who are benefiting from this project renewal, not the institution. We cannot be having an institution which is a state institution, but it's seeking to maximize profit rather than for it to allow it to operate not in cost, because the aim of the institution is to provide the service of education, not to sell education. Remember, education is a right, not a privilege. We cannot be having a situation whereby only those who are privileged are having access to education and others don't have access to education. So project renewal speaks about residencies, limiting the number of beds in the residencies. These students are going to have frustrations next year in January, Professor. When they do not have residencies, the institution will close all these doors of residencies, opening private accommodation, frustrating the very same students which are expected to excel academically. That is project renewal. Who stands to benefit? Is it the institution or the students? I'm going to move to the, I think it's my final point.
Honorable members, please give the member of the floor time to speak, and please don't interject, please.
So I'm just going to move to the final point. You speak of the 18 stakeholders when we speak about curriculum. And in that 18 stakeholders, there is government, which means we don't operate, or the institution doesn't operate as an independent entity. It's part of this country. It operates with and among the boundaries of this country. So we are having a situation whereby the government in this country doesn't build industries where these young people are going to find jobs. 90% of us who are here are going to be jobless after graduation. Just because people are speaking about jobs, but there is no solution of how do you create jobs. That is why we speak about massive industrialization, whereby we are going to find ourselves working in those industries. In South Africa, we import even a toothpick. This government that is leading us. So we are having a problem, Prof, whereby the curriculum we are getting is colonized in such a way that from the time of primary until now, we are fed the colonized curriculum. We must find ourselves that as we are here, student leaders, the curriculum must be decolonized so that we are going to benefit as black students. Salute.
Honorable members, honorable members, I think that was a comprehensive and well-detailed address, actually. And one thing which you constantly say in our addresses, one thing which you always say is that, be in the moment. When you give an address, or maybe when we have a debate in Parliament, be in the moment. Mean what you say by effectively partaking in the moment. And I think that speaker, by passionately partaking in the moment, allowing himself to fully, or everything else to fully correspond with what he was saying, it was good. Now, honorable members, I actually will give over to honorable, the PhD candidate from AES, honorable Damian Mukansi. That's one thing we want you to know, Professor, that with a variety of people in the house, we even have actually a deaf student amongst us. Honorable members, order. We even have a deaf student amongst us in order to show the inclusiveness of this house. But unfortunately, her interpreter couldn't come today, so she most likely missed out on most of actually what is happening today. But again, it actually goes to show that we are inclusive and we take into cognizance, the different abilities. Because I do not want to refer to that as a disability, because it can only be a disability if the environment actually does not speak to that. We all can be disabled because we all have impairments. We only become disabled when the environment which we live in does not accommodate us with our impairments. So with that being said, I just want Prof to know that there's all sorts of people in this house. With that being said, honorable members, I give over to Honorable Mukansi, who actually was slated by his chief whip, Honorable Nguse, to represent the non-political clubs and societies from the College of AS, CSC. Thank you, Honorable Member, over to you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Greetings, firstly to our guests present. Greetings to honorable members. Myself, I would like to once submit the rumors are indeed true. My name is Damian Mukansi. I represent the College of AS, where I serve as a postgraduate. I'm currently doing my PhD, focusing specifically on floods and trying to detect trends in those floods. I will stop there because this is not the dissertation of my PhD.
Here you go, my dog. Here you go, my dog.
I think, Prof, there are things that I had prepared, but I'm already tempted to enter already into your discussions. So as I respond, I want to speak about modernizing the curriculum so that it speaks to us as Africans. But in my submissions, I will touch on some of the things because I wasn't sure that you are going to zone in specifically to Ukzn. And I think we need to take this platform and use it seriously. I think we cannot speak about curriculum if we are not going to include the matter of transformation. And we are not going to speak about transformation if we cannot speak about our history. The reality is the main goal of colonization was to reduce us as Africans, for us to get to a point where we do not believe in ourselves, for us to get to a point where we do not believe in our languages, for us to get to a point where we do not believe in our systems. So it's unfortunate, Prof, that when I was looking at the submission that you were making, speaking specifically on language, the only thing that I saw in your presentation is that everyone at Ukzn now has to do isiZulu. But that's not the transformation that we are speaking about. We are speaking about a transformation where we do not only prioritize English as a medium of instruction. Prof, you cannot tell me that an institution that is renowned for its research cannot set up a website that addresses majority of our students that come from rural areas in isiZulu. It shows, Prof, that there's a lot of excuses, and sometimes it tells us that as an institution you do not care about the people that you are meant to serve. Because that's the first line of departure if we are speaking about transformation. It has never happened that you find that communication is Zulu. The Zulu one comes afterwards, which means even post-apartheid we are still taking the very same systems of oppression where we are trying to reduce our language as a whole. Maybe I'll stop there in terms of the matter of languages. But Prof, the second thing that I want to speak about is where do our religious and cultural systems fit in? The reality is that not everyone that is in this room uses your modern day doctor. Some of them practice African traditional medicine. But you find today that they cannot use that as evidence. You find a student who is well clothed in African, you can see from their body that this one has come from initiation, but they've missed a test, which you are bring a proof. Bring a proof from where, when my Makosi does not have some sort of proof, but you can see it on their body. So if we are speaking about African traditional medicine, about transformation of the curriculum, those are the type of discussions that we want to see. I would once again submit that you have your Makosi there at Howard College, who since COVID has never returned, and the institution does not care. Clearly it tells you that as a student, if you've missed out on a test and you have been practicing African traditional medicine, goodbye to you, and that's it. Number two, something that I want to speak about is people who practice religious practices. Not everyone believes that when you are sick, you must use Ipanad or Grandpa. Someone feels that they should go to their church and they are prayed for, and for some reason they will be fine. What stops the pastor from writing a letter to say, I did consult with this student, they came to me and I gave them a letter, and that's used as evidence? Because that's the context in which we find ourselves. The Europeans use modern day doctors, and that's why they use that as evidence. But I think it is wrong that we are speaking about curriculum review and you still find that we are forced to use your modern day doctors. The third thing I want to speak about is the context itself of the review. You'd expect that we'd have a moving series, Prof. But something that I want to highlight for you is that the institution does a curriculum review in 3 to 5 years in most modules. But you find that the content of somebody who studied at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in 2008 is still the same even today. I've had the privilege to sit in one of these curriculum review. And one thing I can tell you, they do not go over the content. The only thing that they go over is the relevancy of the module. But we don't go strict into the actual content. And it's unfortunate, Prof, that when we sit in CCOMs and ACOMs and there's a student who was out of the system and they're trying to come back to the system, and they were here 5 years ago, they'll be told to restart their module. But restart for what good reason when the curriculum is still the same? The content is still the same. So those are the discussions that I think we should be having. But Prof, I think I also want to speak about how much research contributes to the university. And you find that even though research is contributing to the university, you are not even spending on improving the infrastructure of the university. Majority of the research at this university we cannot do. We rely on getting the services from outside, because you find that infrastructure is surely, just going down the drain. These are some of the limitations in terms of the studies that students can do. But some of the things that I want to draw into your attention when we speak about the curriculum, we also have to ensure that the curriculum is applied, Prof. It can't be that nanamhlanje a student will be going over a curriculum that's not applied. The reason why you find the medicine yet in our country, you find that teaching yet is in our countries is at a level where it is. It's because these students go out into practice. But you find there's a student that will be stuck in class since their first year all the way to fourth year. They've never even interacted with anything that works in reality. They are stuck in theories that they can never ever use. And that means that the university is directly contributing to unemployment, because who will employ someone who will only contribute in terms of theory? The second thing that I want to speak about, Prof, is how we've eliminated the matter of cross-pollination of information. You find that we do not have those programs where our students go to other institutions. Maybe you can select the best students. They go and study at other institutions, and at the end, check how far we are in terms of our curriculum itself. So these are just a few things that I want to speak to you, Prof, when you are sitting here, that we cannot speak about curriculum, rightfully so, if we do not consider the students. And I would like to submit to you, Prof, that the reality is that the curriculum of Ukzn is too modernized and it does not speak to us as African students. And I think that is the actual question that we should address. Before we speak about 4IR and 5IR, that is the real question. How do we as students, majority of your students, how do we fit into your actual curriculum? I submit, thank you.
I actually think I should join and say nah. So, honorable member, thank you so much for such a comprehensive address and actually quite detailed as well. I just want to say one thing, Prof. It may be specifically because the institution even has a charter, the Ukzn Transformation Charter. It may be that the institution intends to ultimately transform itself and subsequently transform society as a whole. But I don't think actually in terms of sort of prioritizing that by ensuring that there's sufficient financial and human resource towards that it's actually doing enough. If you look into the language matter, you actually look at the financial and human resource that the institution invests towards ensuring that ultimately you get to a point of isiZulu is a medium of instruction. I do not think that the institution is doing enough. Yes, there may be willingness to ultimately reach that point, but it's the how do we get there that seems to be an issue at the moment. We look at institutions such as Stellenbosch. We cannot at this point in time be looking at Stellenbosch University as an inspiration in regards to transforming languages. I'm in Xhosa, and recently I actually heard that institution now has 3 mediums of instruction. It's Xhosa, Afrikaans, and English. So we cannot at this point in time, as the premier of African scholarship, be overtaken by former colonial institutions, if I could put it that way. So I definitely think that there needs to be so much work, not just work in terms of actually addressing the matter through webinars and symposium, but there actually needs to be real work on the ground, investing sufficient financial and human resource towards ensuring that it ultimately happens. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, there was an honorable member who actually once reprimanded me for saying ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for that. So I just want to stick strictly to the SPD and what it says about addressing each other. With that being said, it actually concludes not the whole address and everything else in regards to curriculum review, but it actually concludes the formal submissions by the different constituents in Parliament. And now we actually get to a point whereby the speakers, or rather the members of Parliament on the seats, they will directly engage with the professor himself. But I want to implore you members that in doing so, let's please adhere to the rules of the House. That if you have a question that you actually feel needs to be ventilated or needs to be addressed by Professor Solma, you raise up your hand like you actually raise a point of order. You raise up your hand and the speaker notes you. Upon the speaker noting you, you actually state your question, what your question is. And you wait for the speaker on the podium, which would be Professor Solma, to respond accordingly to the question which you would have had. You don't interject or anything to that effect. You just allow him to actually respond accordingly. So that is actually the platform that I'm now opening, that let's engage the address of Prof. Solma. We can even engage the address which actually was made, but I don't want us to actually get there. So let's confine ourselves to the address of Professor Solma, and not so much about what the speakers actually were saying, the likes of Naledi, Damien, and Mkondis. Let's only confine ourselves to the address of Professor Solma. Honorable members, we actually don't have much time, so can we actually try to ensure that when you ask a question, you do not take long. You can provide perspective to your question, because I know that sometimes you actually need to sort of provide context to the question which you're asking. So please, in providing context to the question that you're asking, please be quite brief actually. I'm not sure if I should time people, but Honorable Secretary, do you think we should time people and ensure that the person, 1 minute a person, right? 2 minutes, okay. So you are given 2 minutes to actually ask a question. If you exceed 2 minutes, I will interject and say, Honorable Member, your time is up. So please, I'm not going to say, okay, wrap up or anything to that effect. I'll just say, your time is up, and whatever you would have said at that time will actually be what's going to be captured in the response. All right? Are we all clear? Okay. Then, Honorable Member, is that a point of order? It's a question. Okay. Now I formally open the platform for questions, Honorable Members. People want to engage the address of Professor Solma, and please, at all times, let us be respectful and let us actually display the highest discipline we can ever, Thank you. Because at the end of the day, that's the expectation from people. We are not supposed, the standard used to measure our integrity and discipline as members of Parliament is a bit higher than that of the students, So, you're not like an ordinary student, the bar is a bit higher. So can we live up to that bar? Honorable members, I'll give over. Oh, another thing, I actually forgot. I noted it down. I want to recognize the president of student governance as a whole. The Constitution clearly states that he's not only the president of the executive branch of student governance, but he's also the president of his student governance as a whole. So I want to recognize your presence, Honorable Malusi Tikitela Matyongosi Zuma. I tried to sign all your names. I know that he actually puts emphasis on ensuring that you state all his names exactly as they are. So thank you, Honorable Member. And also acknowledge the Treasurer General, Honorable Nazo Numalo, her presence, and the campus chairpersons who are present. I think it's only the chairperson of medical school who is actually present here, and all other members of the executive branch of student government.
The chairperson of Westby.
How can I forget? How can I forget? Honorable Member, I recognize your presence, the chairperson of Westby campus, the main campus, as they say. Apologies, Honorable Member. Who is that? Yes. Apologies, Honorable Members. Recognition as well to the Central RLO. Yes, you are recognized, Honorable Member. And he was here on time. SSSO, the Central SSSO, Honorable Asanda Pungula. Yes, and all other members actually, all other members of CRCs, and I recognize all of you members. And now, with that being said, I open up the platform for questions, and there was a question, the first hand actually was from, and Honorable Members, I'm going to note hand. Kuphakame isandla sika Honorable Chongo qala, kwalandela sika Damien Ukansi, kwalandela sika Asanda Mbeje, and Nazo. So it's Honorable Chonga, it's Honorable Chongo, Honorable Mkansi, Honorable 1, 2, Honorable Kongo, you are 1. Honorable Mkansi, you are 2. Honorable Pungula, you are 3. Honorable Nazo, you are 4. Honorable Mbecha, you are 5. Honorable Honorable Numa, the Secretary of Parliament, you are 6. Is there a member on that side? Honorable, the Chief Whip of the opposition, you are 7. Is there any other person? I think that's okay. Yeah, Honorable Ntalamandla, you are 8. Honorable Tefelo, you are 9. Yeah, thank you, honorable members. In that order, please. And please remember 2 minutes. Honorable Secretary, please assist me with the time. Honorable members, remember you only stick to 2 minutes because we still have another very exciting presentation by Honorable Suleiman. So please stick to 2 minutes. Yeah, you are number 9. No, honorable member, no, we have an order. No, we have an order, honorable member. Is there a point? No. You are number 9. Honorable Kongo, over to you, honorable member.
Thank you, Speaker. We come along to student from the country. Mine is very simple. Why transform when you can decolonize? That's the first question. With regards to the experiential learning and actually involving industry on this project, I'm disappointed that it took the PYEI and the CETA graduate programs for the university to start employing its graduates. So we are speaking about experiential learning being incorporated into the curriculum. But it seems as if you are only waking up after the PYEI and CETA graduate programs. Why is it that you are what's the plan going forward with this? Are you going to open up the process even internally? Because currently the university is employing graduates for only 6 months. When you go in and apply outside of the university, minimum is 2 years of experience. Are you willing to extend this program to that extent? Number 2, Project Renewal states one of its pillars there is to transform. My question is, you are transforming to which end? Because I feel like we've been throwing this term umbrella, so if I can put it that way. But I really want us to engage now on which end are you transforming. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Just something before the second question. Actually, you can share the link. You can share the link of this seating in all your groups. Do you have the link, right? Yeah, you can just go to the SGLD page and then you share the link. To your SASCO group, to your FFSC group, to your NATESA group, to your Enectas group, and all other groups actually. So just go and actually click on the link and share it with all other people, because I think obviously what's being said here is very important. So it needs to be heard by all other people. So the second question, please.
Thank you very much once again, the Honorable Speaker. I think maybe I just wanted to first comment and say those questions are very good questions, Honorable Speaker. But my question is, when Prof was presenting here, he had those 3 mutually inclusive circles. And I want to understand at what stage does the institution bring in those industry partners into the discussion of the curriculum review? Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. The third speaker, which is Honorable Pungula.
Thank you, Speaker. My name is Asma Pungula. I'm the Central Zone. It's not really a question, but I'll be just responding or providing information to Prof when he was speaking about not knowing what is increasing the number of suicides that are happening on our campuses or rather in our institutions. I think his members or the speakers that were at the podium did touch on some things that the university system really frustrates the students. He even touched on the residencies issues where the residencies are supposed to be provided to students, but we find out that the student get frustrated to get a resident, and then they are told that they must opt for private accommodation. Then you find out later that also those private accommodations they are not safe for them. Then they become frustrated. And also we have the issue of like F10s that we've been experiencing that, and most of our F10s are coming from a very disadvantaged communities where they don't even know the basic computer skills. They don't know how to use a computer to do their work, and the university does not provide a program where those students are going to be taught how to use a computer, how to log on Moodle, how to use a Word, how to even use the Romance referencing. It's not happening. So I think as we are reviewing the curriculum, all those things must be taken into consideration, that we must prioritize like our students that come from disadvantaged backgrounds because they are not exposed to technology at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I think the person after that was Honorable, the Treasurer General, Honorable Muhammad.
Thank you for the opportunity. Mine is not a question, but just a contribution to the discussion. So we're talking about transformation. In that sense, I feel like UKZN as a whole is not really transforming, but it is moving around the chess pieces in order to look like it is actually transforming. Because if UKZN was actually really transforming in order to help the stakeholders, such as students, to actually go out into the community and be able to be contributors and actually boost our economy, they would actually work hand in hand with government. Just the case is whereby the government says we don't have this skill, we don't have these jobs, or these skills are not needed anymore, but still the university is going to actually accept more students more than they need in such fields. Nokuthi futhi university hasn't transformed in a sense that we need to actually transform and get skills more than we need to get theoretical degrees. We need abantu who are going to actually take out the resources in South Africa and use them. We need to actually keep our resources in the country. At the moment, we are one of the most resourced countries like in Africa, but we are taking 90% of our minerals and resources outside. And in that sense, we are also one of the booming economies of Africa, but the trajectory is going down because we are also one of the least actually countries who are focusing on skills, who are focusing skills which are provided in colleges, where we need to actually boost the economy in that sense. We're actually importing people which we can make ourselves in this country. So I feel that there are colleges, but we need our universities to actually transform in a sense that will actually help us boost our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I'm not sure if you have, Honorable Secretary, are you still keeping track of the 2 minutes that we're supposed to give to people? Okay. Not an issue, Honorable Member. We now go to, I think the 6th speaker, which is Honorable Mbeta from PMP Sasco campus. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think Comrade Ukzn actually asked the question that I was going to ask. So in that respect, I'm coming. I think I just want to make a contribution with regards to the implementation of a plan to transform the curriculum. It is very important that when you're going to transform the curriculum, you ensure that the basic structures, the basic support structures of the university are on board project renewal. You did say that it is in the works. So when you implement that project renewal, you need to ensure that the basic support structures, like the psychologists and the ADOs, it is very important that they are also involved and they are effective in delivering their duties. Because I have a personal experience with students who feel that these particular offices and these particular support structures have not been effective really in assisting students with their various issues. And another important thing is the method, or the method of implementing the change that project renewal is coming with. There was at one point an attempt to actually ask students whether they wanted to study their LLB degrees in Ukzn. And students actually, it was actually less than 40% of the students who want to study LLB. But I think the most important part in that, the failure of that question was, it was asked to all students who are studying LLB degrees, and not necessarily first year students who are struggling with understanding the higher level of English that they are going to have to put up with in the LLB degree. So it's very important as well to sort of to have a good method of applying that change that we're going to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I actually think that the next question was from an Honourable Member somewhere around there. Was it on that side? Honourable, it was the Secretary of Parliament. Yeah, the Secretary of Parliament.
Greetings, Honourable Members. So mine is the contribution and also some follow-up questions I want to ask. So Prof, you spoke about, I think in one of the slides, you were speaking about the institutional audit standards. And in standard 16, you said I think some universities, they do follow-ups on their graduates to see how are they performing in their working field, and also those who are unemployed, they bring them back to teach them for free. My first question is, what is stopping UKZN from doing that? And then my second contribution is on the fact that I think, Prof, we have a situation, you said even government, it must be involved or is involved in this thing of curriculum review. But to find out, I just want to ask, is there a working relationship between government and institution? Because you find out at some point, even the government would say, a Minister of Higher Education would say, this degree, a high number of people are unemployed, so we're withdrawing funding. And you find that the institution is taking a large volume of students to still be admitted in that year, while the minister is saying something that is contrary to what the institution is doing. So I just want to ask, is there a working relationship between the government and the institutions, or the institution are just a money-making schemes and exploiting the poor of the poorest of our people? And also, I just want to also ask the fact that some of the degree, what will it take, I think I wrote the question here, what will it take for the institutions to say, this course has been producing a high number of unemployed graduates. Now we have come to the point where we are stopping maybe the program for 5 years to see or to identify what is really happening with this program. What will it take for the institution to do those assessments to say we have been producing high number of unemployed graduates or high number of people who are not employable in these degrees? And also I want to implore you, Prof, if there is a working relationship with the government, can you please have those discussions to even ask, where is South Africa basing their economy? Because at some point you don't understand, we're a very good in industrialization, at some point we're very good in agriculture or whatever. But now you don't know which aspect exactly of economy is South Africa contributing more on it, so that everything that is produced in institution of higher learning is supporting whatever that South Africa is excelling on an economic level. So I just want to ask that if it's possible, can you have those discussions with the government so that we produce something that is meeting the demand of the society or whatever. Thank you, Prof.
Honorable Nopala, I actually allowed you to exceed 2 minutes because of the substance of what you're speaking about. I think you raised very valid questions, so that's why I actually allowed you to way exceed time, because of the substance of specifically what you're speaking about. So now I actually proceed to Honorable Tefelo, if I remember correctly.
I was number one. I was number 7.
Oh, apologies, Chief Whip. Apologies. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Greetings to the House, guest speakers. I'm Kolan Bule, the current chairperson of the EFF leading party at the campus. I'm covered by other colleagues, committee members speak about. I heard you, Prof, speak about the cycling review curriculum, that you said you as the university is sent that you go and review after 3 years. But I've been here from 2017 doing my undergraduate and doing my post studies now. I haven't seen any changes or the change of curriculum in terms of the contents of the undergraduate studies. You will find out that the person who graduated in 2008 is still tested or examined with the same content as the person who should graduate this year. So I want to check the
Honorable members, order, honorable members, order.
When we speak about the change of curriculum, we have to speak about how do we then address that. We need to agree, Prof, that we as the institution, we are the one who provide or who constitute in terms of the growth of employment. I want to ask the university, are there any processes or sittings that you see as for us to have a decolonized education? It starts from the government that we have in this part of South Africa. And what are the challenges that you can bring forward to the current government that you say, we are having these graduates who are unemployed? Then what is the government is doing in that issue, addressing that issue? Another thing, we have graduates from chemistry. I will make an example for chemistry. That those people, they attend practicals, yet the university itself doesn't have a program that seeks to address the unemployment rate. Yet for the graduates that we are producing as the institution, let us have a program that will employ these graduates to produce such things. Chemistry, we learn how to produce plastics, we learn how to produce soap, we learn how to produce substances and that are useful to the community. What is the university doing to get all those graduates that are unemployed to say, you are not employed, then come back, you are a graduate. We have this program, we need people who specialize in producing such products for soap and everything. What is the university is doing to challenge the unemployment rate, yet you are the one who constitutes in the growth of unemployment rate because you are producing the graduates. Yes, those graduates, you don't care after they graduate. You just say, we need more interest to enroll in this program. But yes, the graduates itself, you don't attend to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable member from medical school, Sanu Manin point of order. Yes. Okay. Honorable member, please. There is a point of order.
Speaker, plagiarism is not encouraged. So, Honorable Speaker, the Chief Whip must quote me when he is citing what I said.
Honorable members, that is a free honorable Mukanti. That is a frivolous point of order, honorable Mukanti. That is, thank you. Honorable members, order. We proceed with Honorable Tefelo. Over to you, Honorable Tefelo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to honorable members and greetings to our guests. My honorable speaker is not that much. Comrade Lupala actually managed to cover it, but I just want to highlight why I was raising this point, because initially we have many programs or courses in the university which are no longer in market demand or are no longer market related, which means in future those courses won't be able to accommodate in the place. So as the university, what is, when you talk about the 2023 project in terms of transformation, what is the strategy of the university to ensure that the programs which will be in those strategy in that project are aligned to what industrial regulation as the system and the dynamics are moving to what industrial regulation. So our question is that what is the strategy for the university to ensure that the courses from now on in that 10 years project, the problems that we will have will be aligned to what industrial revolution? As now the system is moving remotely and some of the courses, most people graduate, but even now there are no jobs because the problems they did are not job related, are not market related. So at the end of the day, those people, their degree will be useless. So in the plan of 2023, what is the strategy in terms of mostly post-industrial revolution and the remote learning? Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable member. I think that actually concludes, the answer session. Or there was Taramanda, the last one. Yes, honorable Taramanda.
No, thank you very much.
Order, honorable members, order.
No, as a colleague, I'm very not happy. No, we've been through a lot. We've been administrators of the institution from day one of the access to first years.
Prof, I'm telling you, children on the vet. Well, you know,
Honorable member, please be cognizant of the fact that we don't have time. So can you get your question?
So, Comrade Prof.
Honorable members, please. Honorable members, order, honorable members. Order, honorable members.
A serious problem with excess. So, there are students, as the university or the institution is located in KZN, so there is KwaZulu Natal. So, there are students. I think I'm partially covered by one of the comrades there. So firstly, I would like to raise the proposal as an outgoing SRC. And as a person who worked as a college rep and worked as an administrator of the institution. So, Prof, I propose that, I think comrade either they partially covered me.
Honorable members, order. Honorable member, can I just interject? Honorable member. Honorable Damanda, can I just interject? Honorable member. Honorable Damanda, if you are partially, or because you've been saying you're partially covered by that speaker and that one, so can you please get your actual question, which is not covered by all these other people? I want you to get your question.
Okay, let me move.
Yes, your question, please, honorable. We don't have time.
Wasting my time. So, comrades, then
honorable members, we don't have comrades here.
I propose that this thing of forms, Prof, I'm not joking anymore. This thing of forms is
honorable members, please.
I'm talking as a college rep because I've been there in the access program. So this thing of forms is not working. So the institution must be, so the institution must make sure that this thing is accessed online. The person is at home, just write initials, ST, zone, then fill the form online. Because this thing of, there are people who don't have internet cafes. We have the problem with the internet cafes which do not send the offers to the students. There are forms from the internet cafes which are not accepted by the university, and the emails are sent to the internet cafe, then we know from there. Okay. So we have a problem with the processing of the institution. First thing, postgraduate don't have funding. So this thing of postgraduate not having funding is increasing unemployment, because the postgraduate cannot access in their studies as postgraduate course because they cannot register. So that's the main problem.
Thank you, honorable member. Thank you, honorable member. Honorable member.
Another thing, Prof.
Nazo,
so
what's the time now?
There is no training for people who are hired to help students. These people called the mentors, tutors, not useless. Because this thing is done by comrades, Prof. So there are no mentors, there are no tutors only.
Honorable, what's the actual question? Because time is against you. Honorable members, order, honorable members, order, order. I just want to emphasize one thing, honorable members. degenerate into chaos. So can we please, honourable members, stick strictly to the address of the prof in our questions? But I think that was the last question. I don't think there are further questions after that. But with that being said, now I will give over to Prof to actually answer the point of order. What's the point of order, honourable member?
I would like to advise to you or any other person who would like to speak up for future process that whenever we are having these engagements and whatsoever, the speaker should not have an input, but only us as the house who must have an input.
No, but I think.
Young. But I was saying that I would like to advise you or any other person that has ambitions to be a speaker in future purposes that let us refrain from commenting on whatever the speakers were saying or any other person in the house was speaking about. Like, let us not have input because you are only monitoring us on what we say. We are discussing, not you.
Okay.
That is my advice.
Okay, thank you, honourable member. But in the course of the questions which were actually asked, I'm ruling now to your point of order on providing sort of a response to you. I did not at any point in time attempt to answer a question which was asked by a person or anything to that effect. In regards to the honourable member, I basically made a comment that, can we please, in the course of asking questions, stick strictly so to the contents of the speech or the address of Professor Sonya. So that's specifically something which I actually said. I'm not sure if you are responding to that or not, but
No, I was not talking about you against that matter, but ever since from professors started speaking, after him he commented what you feel, and even after most speakers like the men.
For example, the first question was, why transform when you can decolonize? Indeed, I think there's consensus within my division as well as among students that we moved. I mentioned to the House that it cannot be agreed, otherwise the program cannot be agreed. So those two are always together, government and university. But government and workplaces as well as government, university and workplaces, I'm very concerned about those. I did mention that for example, your workplace learning and related experiential learning would be a true reflection of university coming together with workplaces. It does not happen as much as it should. But it does happen in terms of consultation. People do go to industry principals and ask them to contribute to curriculum development. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So if I say anything here that I want you to remember, it is that as universities in South Africa, we are weak, especially the traditional universities. We are weak in bringing workplaces into curriculum transformation, let alone curriculum maintenance. And this is the primary driver of unemployed graduates. Because these graduates have never seen the workplaces, many of them. And then they suddenly show up with a piece of paper looking for a job. You understand what I'm trying to say here? And remember that the UOT students have been there. You are only appearing there for the first time. And I'm not talking about the professionals. Professionals are very good at this. They take their students to the workplaces so that these students are actually familiar with that place and the industry principals know them. Oh yeah, you were here 3 years ago. You did quite well. Let's feel the facts. This is what I'm hoping I'm clear on this. We have to bring university and state and the workplaces together. So the answer is they do come together in subtle ways, but it's not enough in my view, my humble view. The third question was under which we're not very transparent. We're moving around like playing with chess to look like we're transformed. And this is a serious indictment, and it is based on observation. We're not responding to skills priorities. Economic skills importing is thwarting what we are doing when we have both the capacity to develop these skills and we have done so already. You want me to argue with this? What argument do I have against this? No. We must just integrate this submission into our curriculum transformation agenda. This is why I showed that diagram of the South African economy. It is driven by when the economists that produced that diagram, they selected the 10 drivers. If you look at each driver, we have people, experts, South African experts, with universities producing people in each of those 10 drivers. Why is it that we are still continuing to import skills? Yes, look at IT, for example. About 10 years ago, we had a shortage of 70,000 IT skills in the country to satisfy the IT economy. What has happened to those 70,000? Has it gone down or gone up? It has gone up. So we continue to produce IT skills from IT departments in the universities and in UOTs, but the market is insatiable. What this submission is saying to me is that we must escalate the production of skills that are scarce, instead of saying, okay, we'll continue to produce at this level, and any extra needed we will import. Why? There are 26 universities. They must just upscale. The fifth question was concerned with the support structures, particularly in project renewal, number one, curriculum transformation, and strategic planning, especially the involvement of the development of a teaching and learning strategy, research strategy, and community engagements, which together form the academic strategy, which is the key driver of transformation. I admit, we have not been very active in integrating professional services. Now, the way in which we deliver business, curriculum business at the universities, we use the academics at the forefront, at the code phase, but right behind them, there are your professional services. And if you remove those professional services, the academic core business delivery falls flat on its face. That's where this submission is coming. Well, those professional services must be part and parcel of the various platforms for renewal of the curriculum, strategic planning, and the actual implementation of the renewal. As I said, these will influence how we go about the business of curriculum renewal going forward. The sixth question was, what is stopping UKZN from recalling a graduate for free? If you have a great answer, resources, can't afford it. I know that many universities that go out to try and mobilize resources from the private sector, asking specifically for money to bring back the graduates that are unemployed for the following three key areas. One, micro skills, because most of the graduates fail in the marketplace because of lack of micro skills. They have the knowledge, praxis. The practical, the competencies. This is the major problem of traditional universities. We have beautiful knowledge. I mean, the graduates who produce, they sing the stuff they were taught. But can they do it? That's where it's going to graduates. And number 3, micro-credential. Micro-credentialing now encompasses all of these. So that in that work environment, you've got to be able to operate a computer. You've got to operate, you've got to be able to chair meetings. You've got to be able to conduct research to answer questions that relate to that workplace. This is why one of the projects in the teaching and learning strategy that I showed you, 38 projects, one of the projects is introducing research methodology and skills at undergraduate. Because today, most of the undergraduate students will go into the workplace and they will be told, listen, we don't understand the market dynamics of this. Will you go and research? No research skills. And research skills, as you know, they give rise to systemic thinking and all other micro skills. It's a very powerful tool for micro skilling. Other skills are just your ability to talk to people. You know, the traditional university is sticking to the question paper for exams. Stubborn. We will not move to presentations. We will not move to, those things. And yet, the first thing that they want you to do in the interview is what? Present. You don't get me started on this question. Okay. The second submission from number 6 was, as an institution, we are recruiting into unemployed graduates in terms of the courses that we still maintain and we are unable to either transform or remove. Now, this is the crux of the old and new. In the olden ways of doing business, courses that were leading to unemployment were censored, cut off, removed from the curriculum. Even today, China is doing that. China has declared, the Minister of Education in China is saying, under 60% employment, we're not funding that program. So, the government of China. My take, it's the wrong way to do it. I mean, why are we even talking about curriculum transformation? That's not curriculum transformation. That's curriculum curtailment, or that's curriculum censorship. Take the curriculum of that program that leads to unemployment, change, that's curriculum. That's curriculum transformation. Change it by bringing those 3 circles. Let the industry speak to it. Let government speak to it. And then it is renewed. And it has an appetite in the industry. And these graduates can either get jobs or they can start their own business. So I have a bias when it comes to curriculum transformation. Do not kill the programs. Transform them. Where is a SA basing its economy? This is a fundamental question. This question is calling for support of higher education in order to support South Africa's excellence. Okay, I'm just going to quote one example. The example of the Far East. In the Far East, nations specialize. South Korea, 4 specializations: logistics, appliances, heavy equipment production like building ships, and see that my age is catching up. But I know they specialize. I ask you, what does South Africa specialize in order to excel in that? Thank you. We have no specialty. We're trying to be everything to everybody. It can't be. And yet we have, within South Africa, a competitive advantage that is very old. We have such huge stores of resources under the ground. Diamond, gold, platinum, copper, you name it. We can build an economy, a holistic economy around that through several layers of value addition on these products. So that no product, no gold products are made elsewhere. We mine it, we value add it, and we value add it again. We mine it and we sell it. The Israelis, they take it, they make it jewelry. The Far East technocrats, they take it and they make electronics. Okay. The problem in this case is both integration of government and university for value addition of our product to create a specialist economy for South Africa. However, I must say that a specialist economy is very scary. Maybe that is why our lawmakers and politicians are scared of it, because a specialist economy, if it crumbles, your economy is finished. That's why most people specialize in 4 or 5 things, so that if number 1 crumbles, you still have 2, 3. But in South Africa, we're taking a resource-draining approach of trying to be everything to everybody, and it's not working. However, I want to start celebrating what I'm seeing developing now. If you look at those diagrams that I showed, almost all the provinces have a very robust services economy. In other words, it would appear that our universities might want to specialize in professional services programs. Because our services, banking services, health services, educational services, tourism and catering services, we are becoming big on the service side. It would make sense for South Africa to specialize in that, then universities also specialize. They can in fact specialize until you have what you have, for example, in China. In China, you would go to a university, this one is like Shanghai University of High Voltage Electric Power. There's no law there, no humanities, no agriculture. High voltage electric power only. And you go another one. This one specializes in communications. That's it. I'm wondering why China is emerging as a world power economy. So very specialist. I would not disagree, but I'm going deep into the Chinese curriculum. What are the processes for a decolonized country? What are we doing about unemployed graduates? I think we've covered this question. Also in terms of business startups, I think really I've covered the issue of business startups. I'm 64 years, I'm going to retire next year. I won't have time to push this movement any further. This movement that I've tried to push so far has not been very successful. I would like to see an overall transformation of the higher education from a degree churning machinery of the country to a businesses and industries churning machinery. It's a dream. And they've told me that it's a pipe dream. You're dreaming, it will never happen. I accept, but I'm still dreaming. And then it happened. What happens, of course, when it's no longer market created? That is the strategy for dealing with it. I think in part I've covered that. My philosophy is not to kill it, but to transform it. And the reason why I believe this is that actually that's what, to me, curriculum transformation is all about. It's transforming something that doesn't work for the graduate to make it work for the economy. Something that doesn't work for the economy to make it work for the economy. Doesn't work for society, make it work for society. My belief is that as leadership in higher education, as student leadership in higher education, we really must make this a priority. This is what we must excel in. Transforming things that don't work and making them work. If we are not good at that, then generally, as higher education leadership, we are very poor. Both student leadership and institutional leadership. We have to be good in transforming things that don't work and make them work. And boast about it. We put it out there in the link. And then there is Tulan Ndaman, Yabonga Kumfoit. But she won't cook what You are right. The hard copy system is not working. We need to get the digital system working. I'll be glad to inform you that we have been tasked by the Vice Chancellor, for example, this is just to engage and develop a form of registering FTNs online. And we have made the university agree to put, just as a startup at KZN, 2 agents in each province at work, who will each to assist all FTNs apply registering to register from their province. Don't have to come down to, if they want to come down to KZN, there's another hub where they will be assisted. But we are doing it. And we're going to do 2 dry runs before the end of the year to prove that it works. The postgraduate funding for a university which is a leader in producing research outputs. You are aware that we are #1 in the country, and that makes us #1 in Africa. Therefore, why is it we are still not funding very well postgraduate students? There is a new DPC for research, and he is not unaware of the program. And EMC is not unaware of it. The Vice Chancellor is not unaware of it. It's not yet been solved, but we are quite aware of it. NRF comes into the party, most of our students are funded. I have 2 doctoral students at PMB. I'm taking a master's this coming year, and all of them will come with funding already from NRF. I've got a Welcome Trust a grant that's coming up, and other grants. That's the way to do research. The research principals, they get the grants, the students come in to do the work. Any other model for me doesn't work. So if you're coming in as my student and I don't have funding for you, why am I making you my student? Are you following this thinking? I'm saying, I'm a research principal, I have a research group, and now you want to come in as a master's student, I say come, but I don't have funding for you. It can't work. As the group leader, my primary responsibility is to establish funding and count it. Okay, this is good for 7 doctoral students and 5 masters, and that's what I want. Training for people hired for mentoring students, I've already touched on that. We are going to train these agents that are in the provinces. 2 per province, 24 of them. And in the hubs, 1 hub in Maritzburg, another hub in Durban, we're going to have around 10 to 20 agents. Before they can even sit and assist anybody, they have to. Now we have people assisting students internally. They've been doing this for years without training. We're changing that, including tutors, by the way. You might not be aware of this, but some of our tutors are trained in tutoring in issues. And the survey that we have conducted shows that this group of Zulu-based or indigenous language-based tutor is vexed. Finally, the final is that there are no tutors. Yes, there aren't many tutors, but the UCDP program, which is a government program, allows us to hire tutors, and the university does hire tutors. It's a phenomenon that I have not been able to understand, because even my colleagues, DVCs and heads of college, they say, we have the money. And so let us engage further on this one. Postgraduate students, please make yourselves available for tutorship. You will be trained. The money is there. Seriously. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, Prof, I just want to say that thank you on behalf of Parliament for your contributions to this sitting. And we'll actually conclude, there will be a second address by Honorable Suleiman. And then after Honorable Suleiman's address, then we'll actually conclude with this session, and then you can be free to go. But if you actually want to excuse yourself at this point in time, you're more than welcome to. But we'll actually conclude with the business of this particular seat here, after the session. Honorable members, I actually now, Prof. Song has spoken, and you have engaged with the Prof. Song, and now we actually go to another perspective about curriculum review. And this perspective actually comes from a student of UKZN, a fourth-year medical student. Not only is he just a fourth-year medical student, but he also is I think an editor of a journal, of a global journal of medical students. He recently actually was on a worldwide tour, going to the European countries, and meeting the likes of Dr. Tedros, the Director General of World Health Organization. So we actually felt as Parliament that this is someone who brings a fresh perspective to curriculum review. This is someone actually who can be able to make a comparison between ourselves and established nations such as UK and all these other different countries. So with that being said, honorable members, I actually welcome to the podium Honorable Mr. Mohammed Hussein Suleiman. Over to you. Then, honorable members, after the address, we actually have 5 questions, and then we can go have food. Thank you. Yeah, let's get started, please.
Thank you so much, Speaker of the Student Parliament. May I start off by taking this opportunity to...
Order, honorable members, please. Order. Yes.
May I start off by taking this opportunity to express my deep gratitude and appreciation to the Student Parliament for this opportunity to address you today. I start off by greeting the Speaker of Parliament, the Deputy Speaker, the Secretary, the President of the SRC and his collective, and to all of the honorable members who are present here today. It's been a long day, but I'm quite inspired by a lot of the discussions that have taken place today. And I think that we as student leaders from all formations, we have a responsibility. We are duty bound that some of the discussions we take today, we are the ones that will be implementing them come tomorrow. So I'm an advocate when it comes to future leaders of society, in that we have to be conscious of the issues that the country faces today. Ultimately, we shoulder that responsibility to be implementing those systems and policies that we have raised here today in the House. My presentation will not be too long. I will be brief, and I will touch on some of the topics, or rather the topic that I have been tasked today. It's to speak on the state of the public health system in South Africa, but also to attempt to answer the question if our higher education institutions are equipping the future health workforce. I will be speaking because I'm in the medical fraternity, I will be speaking a lot to the future health workforce. But Speaker, please allow me to depart for a short period of time from the task that I have been mandated today. I was quite inspired by the address of Prof, and I think I want to allude to just one issue, in that when we look at the graduates from the university, there's almost this attitude of the university that we don't have to worry after they have graduated. And you've cited a good example how that overseas universities, they actually follow up on the students that have graduated, and if they do not have a job, to bring them back. Does that necessarily mean that the university did not equip the student? No, I don't think so. I think it's because there's a lack of employment opportunity. It may not be feasible in our context to bring back the students at no cost to the university. But I think we can take something from private institutions in the country, in that they actually look for jobs for the students. And then I wonder if the University of KwaZulu-Natal could collaborate, could establish a working relationship or a communication platform quite early on that would secure job spaces for our students, such that when they graduate, they have this opportunity in the working environment. And I think at some point, at the end of last year, I actually made a submission to the medical school dean, Professor Glover, in that this issue of the funding for the medical students, because at some point we had, I think, 300 students that were not funded and were at the risk of being excluded. And I said that because I have a pharmacy degree, and when you look at the pharmacy, at the curriculum, these private institutions like Discam, Clicks, Medirite, they have a platform where they fund the student and then they secure job for the student that they funded. So at the medical school, can we create something where we go to Netcare, to Life Healthcare, and to these private healthcare institutions? Can you fund our students and employ them when they start working? So I think it's quite interesting discussions that we're having today, and it's certainly extremely complex problems that as a collective we have to subject this discussion to the collective wisdom of the leaders that we have today. When we look at our public health system, and it's something that I'm exposed to on a daily basis, the last 2 weeks I'm at Albert Luthuli Hospital, how efficiently it is run. And I think partly due to the private partnership for that hospital. But when you look predominantly at healthcare institutions in the country, they are overwhelmed, they are overburdened. And the last 2.5 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has further exposed that reality that our healthcare institutions are unable to cope with what is required of them. Close to 3/4 of the population is dependent on the public health system. It's dependent on our public health hospitals to service their needs. And just over 1/4 of the population are dependent on the private institutions. So already we can see this disconnect in that the vast majority of the population are already dependent on the public health system, which is not being efficiently run to cope with the needs of the population that it will service. When we look further into this issue, in that what could be a problem, could it be that we are underfinancing our healthcare systems at the public level? And we find that when we look at the GDP for the country, in South Africa, 9.1% of our GDP is allocated to the health sector. And when we compare this, or we ask ourselves, is it enough? And a study that was published by colleagues and I can't get the name now, they've recommended that for any country to advance universal health coverage. What's universal health coverage? Where we are able to provide health services to both the public and to those who can afford private, such that there's equality in the distribution of services we give. If we want to advance the agenda of universal health coverage, at least 5% of our GDP must go to the health sector. In South Africa, we have 9.1%. Yet we have a health system that we claim to be underfunded, to be overwhelmed, to be overburdened. When we want to compare policies and systems in South Africa, we must always compare to the United Kingdom. And I say this because there are many similarities, in particular when you come to the population size. In the United Kingdom, there's about 68 million of the population. In South Africa, I think the census was released in June 2022, 60 million. So we can always draw comparison. In the United Kingdom, 10.1% of the GDP is allocated for health. So are we doing bad as a country? No, I don't think so. We've put in enough of our GDP for the health sector. When you look at the United States, 16.8% of their GDP is allocated to health. And the United States is counted officially as the country with the most progressive health system that can give health services to their population quite efficiently. So, what is our issue in South Africa? Our GDP, we are giving 9.1% of the GDP to the health sector, yet we're seeing a situation where there are queues upon queues for people who are waiting to use the health services. Let's perhaps zoom in on 3 key issues that I've identified. And the first one is that the healthcare institution, so the needs of the people exceed the capacity of that healthcare institution. And the first point is actually tied in with the second point, in that our people are unaware of their health status, and they present to the health institution quite later on in life. And we must always remember that prevention is always better than cure. But our primary healthcare system, it's more a curative approach as opposed to a preventative approach. But there seems to be a stimulation on the part of government to change this holistically, in that we want to adopt a preventative approach. And when we look at the COVID-19 pandemic, it has unpacked a lot of the issues in terms of the health status of our people. When they were infected with the virus, we were able to pick up these chronic comorbidities that we are seeing in our population. So the first and second point, there's a direct link in that our health system is unable to cope with the health needs of the people that it will be servicing, partly because our people do not know their health status. And I'm just reminded that the HIV epidemic that we are faced with, and so you'd know that in South Africa we are faced with a quadruple burden of disease. Firstly, it's the HIV and AIDS epidemic. Second, it's the TB epidemic. 3, it's the maternal and child health mortality. And 4th, it's the non-communicable diseases. So this could include hypertension, diabetes, and cardiac-related diseases. And we often find that, so the HIV epidemic, South Africa is home to almost 1 in 5 cases globally. We have almost 20% of the HIV epidemic burden in South Africa. KwaZulu-Natal being the epicenter of that. Why is it that only when people are infected with HIV we want to seek help? Why can't we take a proactive approach, a preventative approach to safeguard ourselves from the HIV burden. Thirdly, we find that the way the health system is applied, it may not necessarily be in the manner that is most efficient. And there's a range of reasons that one could attribute to this problem. Is it that we are not equipping those administrators with the necessary skills? And this issue would then tie in with the second part of my presentation. Is the higher education institution equipping that health workforce to apply their knowledge of the health system? But just before I touch on the issue of the health system, I want to, and I intentionally made this slide on its own because it speaks to corruption and the rot in the corruption that prevents health systems from efficiently using the finances. So in the slide earlier, I spoke to that our GDP, it's almost the same as the United Kingdom in that it's 9.1%. Yet, we claim that we are underfinancing the health system. Where's the problem? What can we, and when we look at a deeper level, where's the issue? And we find that corruption features at every level. It can be from the highest to the least. And when we look at this important point of the national health insurance, it's the NHA, it's the NHI, which we thought full implementation will be by the year 2026. But now we see full implementation is projected for 2030, partly due to the COVID-19 pandemic utilizing some of the funds. But I think also this issue of corruption, and the former Minister of Health has also brought to light how corruption will impede or will hinder progress to advancing this agenda of the NHI. And we can see that on the right-hand side where the SIU, the Special Investigating Unit, is investigating corruption in the healthcare system. And just last week in Johannesburg, I think Tembisa Hospital, where the Department of Health in Gauteng, they are paying 10,000 Rand for a bucket that sells for 25 Rand. Can you imagine how deep-rooted this issue of corruption is? And for the entire tender, 55 million Rand. You're paying 10,000 Rand for a bucket that costs 25 Rand. And on one invoice, on one tender, it is 55 million Rand. And when you look holistically, just at the Department of Health, just in one place, 850 million Rand being investigated. And then we ask ourselves, where's this problem that we say our healthcare system is being underfunded? Our GDP says that 9.1% is being attributed to the health sector. Yet we cannot fully realize the potential of those figures in the healthcare system. So corruption, I think that we as the youth, we have a responsibility to be advocating for policies that will be put in place that are anti-corruption, that we will hold our politicians to be accountable for all of the decisions that they take. To speak a little on the on the higher education institution, in South Africa, we have 26 institutions of higher learning, and only 10 of those have medical schools. Only 10 of those will be equipping the future healthcare workforce that will be attending to the healthcare needs of our population. And just recently, when I was interviewed on radio, I was asked this quite difficult question in that, how do we solve this problem? How do we ensure that we recruit more of our healthcare workforce such that on the front line, and we've seen it in COVID-19, that our healthcare workforce was dependent on the newly recruited healthcare workers, on the interns, and even the students who are in their final year to assist on the front line. But the question then becomes, what is the long-term solution for this problem? Is there any way that we can expand our intake for the curriculum? And I said, yes, absolutely, that if we can secure funding to open up more healthcare institutions, if we can secure funding that will ensure we have the infrastructure, we have teachers, we have lecturers who are equipped with the necessary skill set to train our young and future healthcare workforce, we would have solved this issue of where in the front line we do not have the sufficient workforce. And we've seen that with COVID-19, when we are faced with a wave of infections, we have to immediately go into lockdown. Why? Because our healthcare systems are overburdened. We cannot attend to the healthcare needs of that population, partly because our healthcare workforce is not enough to be servicing the needs of the people. So I think absolutely there is a way to answer this question, in that if we can increase the number of medical schools, and so we're not just confined to these 10 schools for the medical fraternity. There's certainly a need for us to prioritize the health workforce, and we've seen that with COVID-19 in the last 2.5 years, there's a wave of infections. Our healthcare workforce is on the front line. For the same reason they were prioritized when the vaccines were available in the early on, it was in early 2021. But the health and well-being of any population, and not just of its health workforce, it's actually considered a national asset, in that if you want to threaten the stability of a people, of a population, and you threaten the health sector, then I think you would have conquered, or you would be taking over that population. So our health and well-being, it's considered a national asset that we ought to safeguard. And in all our policies, our systems, we have to ensure safety and security for the health of our population. And I spoke to how the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the insufficient workforce at healthcare facilities, and how we have to make room to increase the number of students that we can take in the medical fraternity, such that in the long term it's an investment. The institutions of higher learning, yes, to create more space for the health science students. This is an article that was published by colleagues in the East and Southern Africa, and they looked at the health workforce in the country. And they found that when we say that it's an investment in the health workforce, the return is actually up to 10 times greater. So if you take a medical student or a student in any discipline of health sciences, and if the government has to finance or has to fund the student, so per year, if it's 120,000 Rand for the tuition fees, for the meals and allowances, for the accommodation, in a 6-year period, that would come to 720,000 Rand. That return on the part of government can be up to 10-fold per student. This study has actually found that. And the study also focuses that there isn't only an issue in sub-Saharan Africa or in South Africa. It's a continental issue, in that there's a continental shortfall of 6.1 million healthcare workers. And that we have to invest, we have to prioritize investments in this. I've spoken of the massive return that the investors or the government could see should they invest efforts, they invest resources and infrastructure in our healthcare in the healthcare workforce. This issue of unemployment, it will feature in every sphere, in every factor, in all disciplines, if it's from accounting, from engineering, from law, from every college. There's always this challenge, this issue of unemployment. But I think there has been significant progress, and there will be significant progress. And I think I've touched on some of the points earlier, in that how can we ensure our students who graduate are not unemployed? Does the university have to go after them to find out that we have not equipped you with the skills? Or does the university go straight to the corporates, go straight to the working companies to say, can we establish a relationship, a platform, such that our graduates will come to you when they graduate? And I think that there's a lot of work to be done on this point particularly, and it's part of the discussions that we've spoken about earlier, in that this issue of unemployment, when you graduate, you're unemployed. Can the university do anything for their graduate such that they are able to secure a working space? So I think that is the last slide. I want to take this opportunity once again to thank the Student Parliament for inviting me to just share a few points to this complex issue. I have been tasked with the difficult one, to speak on the state of the South African public health system, and to touch on if our higher education institutions are equipping that future health workforce. So I once again thank the Speaker of Parliament and to all of the honorable members for your time, for affording me this opportunity to share with you some insight into this issue. Thank you so much.
of the students that graduated and whatsoever. I think graduate, they have to be interns or community service, so that the students who graduated they can gain that experience and also find work opportunities. So if all of us here can go out to the communities and eventually maybe become leaders to different sectors of government, I would argue that most sectors adopt such a progressive manner of that. If you were doing a degree maybe in law or something, I don't know, there is a sector, I don't think so. But whatever sector that is there, and then create things like internship and also community service, so that people who graduated, because with us you cannot be a doctor if you didn't go through internship and also community service. Yes, you are called a doctor, but you are actually not if you didn't go through that. So for someone to feel that they have to be programs by government, let's say is the one have to go through internship or community service so that they can get that experience and also have a salary so that they can earn. So that is what I would like to argue. And also I would like to touch that poverty is what drives our health system. We are having so much problems because of the poverty. If you give umuntu amaphilisi ethi uthakani, and the person can have nothing to eat before taking those tablets, obviously they are going to default and come back to that health system and cause ilokhu ukuthi kugcwale njengoba adesho nje umfowethu lapha. So the thing is, it's a matter of ukuthi if we go out here from this institution and become leaders outside, let us make sure that we address this thing of the poverty, because that thing, if we address poverty, eventually our health system is going to thrive. Mothers are dying because if maybe a mother is pregnant, they don't have transport to come here, or it's very late, they don't have a car whatsoever, or the child is dying because of malnutrition. There is everything that has to do with the poverty. And this thing of HIV is very serious, honorable members. Let us make sure that we take care of ourselves. Let us take the thing of the circumcision serious. Let's take the thing of condom serious, and make sure that we practice safe sex and abstain if possible. Because this thing of rushing for sexual intercourse can put you in very disadvantaged position, because you wake up next day, someone is saying you're afraid. You know, because you couldn't control your mind psychologically. Actually, now I really need to do this. You know, and you are exposing yourself. Now you are rushing. You don't have time to take a condom, and then you find yourself exposed to contracting.
Order, honorable members. Order. Order, honorable members. Honorable Speaker, can you please wrap up? Can you please wrap up? Actually? Yes, honorable members, I am the speaker. There can only be one speaker of parliament. I think we only timed 2 people. Actually, even in the previous session, we allowed people to exceed that 2 minutes. So can you please keep the speaker on the podium? Time to finish, please. Honorable member.
I would say, honorable members, take care of yourselves. And then we talked about this issue of the NHI. And the worry that it's going to bring us in corruption and everything. NHI is a very progressive initiative by the government, I would say. In the right hands, is going to be progressive for the country, and especially for the country that is driven by or driving towards socialism and communism. That is what I can say. Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Just a point of information, he's an aspiring doctor, he's a medical student, so whatever that he says, you have to sort of be cautious of it, because he is a doctor in the making, so yeah, we have to take seriously what he's saying. With that being said, I'll actually give over to the last person in regards to questions, and that is Honorable Nazo Nimalu, the Treasurer General, who also hails from medical school. Over to you, Honorable Member.
Thank you for the opportunity, Speaker. Honorable Speaker. Okay, my first question, then the rest will be a comment. The question is...
Honorable Members, please, order. Hey.
You said that the stats essay said that in our country we have about 16 million people who like 71% of them, I think, are dependent on the healthcare system. You said something like that. Did this also, are you also taking into account now when you are looking at these two, the UK and South Africa, are you taking into account the foreign nationals which are also burdening the healthcare system of South Africa? Because it's not just the residents of South Africa who are also relying on our healthcare system. Are you taking that into account, and also how is that also affecting us, and can we then compare ourselves with the UK if we have such a burden? Then we also say that we are giving 91% of our GDP to the healthcare, 9.1, sorry, 9.1 to our healthcare system, but we have provinces such as Gauteng who actually at the beginning of the year cannot even pay their healthcare workers. So in such a manner where, like as you said, we have a lot of corruption. So in that sense, you also cannot again compare us really to the UK, because our function is different, and we also need to actually work on those elements before we can actually be to that regard. Then I think I'll take my rest there.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Member. I'll actually give over now to Honorable Suleiman to respond to the two questions that you asked. The first was not so much a question, but actually a contribution. So I'll give over to you, Honorable Member, to actually, just for today, you are an Honorable Member because you are speaking today. So excuse me for addressing you as Honorable Member. Over to you, Honorable Member.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and for those questions from the floor. I think on the first point, that was a comment that indeed sectors can learn a lot from health, in that if we can create a platform for internship, for community service, we will begin to deal with this issue of the high rates of unemployment that we have. So I think that in the health sector, that as a pharmacist, as a medical doctor, when you graduate, you have to do internship. You have to do community service, and the government is obligated to place you to do your internship and your community service. So I think that with other sectors, if they can try to incorporate that such that there's an obligation on a party, on an organization, on an institution to ensure that you have employment, we will be going in the right direction. In terms of HIV, when you spoke, I think that COVID-19 has ignited in us, has stimulated in us. We have to be cautious. We have to be aware of health burdens, of diseases, of disease outbreaks that we are faced with. We have to exercise hygiene all the time. But we often find in the long term we become complacent, we become relaxed, and we have to continuously remind ourselves of potential disease outbreaks. So I think I accept that comment. I think that for NHI it will ensure, or the objective is to tackle health inequity. So you are certainly correct that if we can fully realize the agenda of NHI, it will take us a very, very long way. And we can only hope that all efforts are invested in ensuring full implementation sooner than the projected 2030. To come to the second speaker, where you mentioned, can we really compare ourselves to the UK, and are we incorporating the foreign nationals into that population I spoke about, the 71%? So my understanding is that with foreign nationals, if you are registered, you can access the services of our health system. And I think that now in South Africa, there's been this discussion of the foreign nationals due to that issue, the MEC in Limpopo, who was denying services to a patient who is an illegal foreigner, I believe. I think if you are registered, you have right to access the services of our health system. If you are unregistered, it's a different case altogether, because then it becomes a debate that a person who is illegally in the country, but now they are heavily dependent on health services immediately, do we render health services? It becomes a very complex issue, and it becomes highly debatable. My personal opinion is that as healthcare workers, we're duty bound to give services immediately, irrespective. It then becomes our duty to raise these issues in the correct platforms. So my take or my response is that if there's an illegal person in the country who needs health services, we're duty bound to attend to them and to stabilize them in the correct platform. Because I mean, as an MEC for health, you have a platform, you have opportunity to speak, then you raise the issues there. So can we compare ourselves to the UK health system? You'll find often with COVID-19 that the Ministerial Advisory Committee that was led by Professor Salim Abdul Karim, you'll find a lot of the comparisons were taken from international countries. But when you look at international countries, who can we look to? Who is progressive in the health sector? Now, when you look at the United States being the most progressive, it would not be a fair comparison. The United States is a population of over 300 million. In South Africa, we have 60 million. But in the UK, has a population almost the same as us, 68 million. And the UK being projected as one of the progressive healthcare systems because they've achieved, to some extent, this agenda of the National Health Insurance. Can South Africa then look to the UK policies? How can we take from that system and that policy and we refine it to our context? So I think certainly we should not only look to ourselves in that how can we achieve a certain, but look at other countries as we have done with COVID-19. Where is it being successfully implemented and how can we bring it here, but also to refine it to our setting. And I'm just reminded of something now, that in 2019, where there were calls from the public for the death penalty for a person who has committed a crime or a murder. And our Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, he cited an example in Brazil where they had implemented the death penalty, but they found crime rates were not being reduced. So do we just, if there's a public outcry, will it really achieve that objective that we want it to? So it's always important that we draw a similitude, we draw comparisons, we see where it's working for other countries, and if it's not working, why isn't it working? What is the shortfall there? And so we bring it back home, and how can we advance the agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. There are 17 of them, and it speaks to all sectors of society. And the third one being on good health and well-being, and I think the fourth one is on education. These were the two areas I touched on in the presentation. I hope that I have touched on your question and I've answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. And with that being said, actually concludes the question and answer session, specifically, linked to the address of Honorable Mohammed Hussein Suleiman. And with that being said, Honorable Members, I actually want to adjourn the first sitting. So, because we didn't have that first session in the morning, so now this actually served as the first session. But there is a question. Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, Honorable Member, I actually forgot about the question. What's your question?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. But I think we are Parliament and we have a process here. Must address just a few things. I think I'm very concerned, Prof, in terms of your staff. I think they deviate a lot from the purpose of teaching and learning. Let me make one instance where a student is struggling to upload a module, and before the test ends, they send something via email, and you find your staff giving the student 0. And that student has to then redo a module when they've actually gone through the whole system. They've been taught and they've produced not accepting such things. Number 2, Prof, I think all students are assessed in the university in places, in venues where there are evidence. Kota the medical school, we have an issue where, especially to leaders, when they are victimized, they pay better because of certain professionals who told us you were bringing a query, you've been probing on behalf of students. So these are the things that we want you to, into curriculum, you must look into it. Because here's the route to lead the fact that you are leading, it means that I will interact with the office. And I cannot smile at your office just because you have a censor at the end of the semester. I still need to be true to the course. So these are just a concern. But the first one that I also put to you is one that is very disturbing in nature. Number 2, it does not make logic. And number 3, I don't think there should be any room for such behavior within the institution. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, I actually opened a set of hands at the beginning of the, in fact, after the address of Honorable Suleiman. So now the fact that there will be new hands actually, being raised at this point in time, I'm going to be concerned with that and actually take an issue with that. So I'm going to allow you, Honorable Tongo, but after that, I'm not going to allow any other person, because even outside, actually, we're dealing with a crisis, of people wanting food forcefully. So, honorable members at that, actually, you are representing students in Parliament, So now, obviously, I want to avoid further chaos by ensuring that they're able to actually get out and actually have refreshment and all of that. So, Honorable Tongo, you're the last person to actually raise a hand in regards to this seating. Any other hand will actually be in the next seating, in the next session, because after eating, we'll come back and actually have a second session.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank
you. Sorry, actually I forgot something I wanted to raise when you had pointed me in. I just remembered it. 2 things. Number 1, I must say we are worried as students at the constant decline or decay of institutional memory within the university. Most of the things we're still speaking about and fighting for were actually resolutions at some point in the past. To make a typical example, I'm glad that the Prof is here, because I heard that they are going to formally put the issue of special exemption within the university country. It's being put now, and in the past few years, it has been an issue for contention, because some academics felt like it's unnecessary, whereas it has been something that we agreed upon yesterday. So I'm worried about the institutional memory of the university on key critical issues that affect, in particular, black students. Ukzn is an intensive institution in the sense that it focuses on quintile 1 to 4, and the policy must reflect. And second thing before I sit down, Prof, is that the issue is that we don't have a mechanism to hold lecturers and supervisors accountable. And this is a problem because supervisors are victimizing students and there's no repercussion for it. A supervisor will have, in a space of 2 years, supervise close to 10 students. Only 2 get to pass whatever that dissertation is. And there are no repercussions for that. So I'm very much worried about the processes and the mechanisms in place that actually reflect how students feel about particular lecturers and supervisors, and therefore we should be able to come.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Honourable Member. I just want, before I adjourn the House, I actually want to again point out to what I had said earlier on, that change does not start in big stages. It actually starts in small stages, in stages such as this one. And it actually follows after a constellation of conversations. And ultimately, we have to ensure that we actually supplement whatever conversations that we have amongst ourselves with action. It does not end here, the fact that we're just having conversations and dialogues. We must, when we go back to our constituents, ensure that we supplement whatever we've been discussing in the course of this sitting through actions. And with that being said, honourable members, again, I want to implore you, honourable members, to live up to the decorum of this House at all times, because you are not representatives of yourselves, you are representing constituents, students in campuses. So can we, again, I actually want to emphasize on this one, can we actually reflect the respect that we have for our constituents in conducting ourselves inside the precinct or even outside the precinct, actually. With that being said, honourable members, I actually thank Professor Solna. I also thank Honourable Suleiman for attending this session and actually partaking in the conversation. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you'll be able actually to take something to your constituency. With that being said, thank you so much, and yeah, you can hold it. Thank you.